So Chris, you're based in kind of central Jersey. Where do you do business in Jersey?
But for the most part, north to south, think, mid-Middlesex through Burlington County, and then the Delaware River, depending on what it's for, I'll go out all the way out to the ocean. So a pretty big slice of central to South New Jersey.
Not a lot of people understand that in the New Jersey real estate market, there's this invisible line that kind of cuts right across the middle of New Jersey where they use attorneys and they really don't use attorneys.
Absolutely.
So, and I've even found that, on the South Jersey side where it's primarily, more so representation or difficult, negotiations, that's when they're going to bring that in. But your thoughts on, the best use of an attorney in a real estate transaction, because I do believe there is a possibility to bring in people at the right time. Right. But I also feel that, in most negotiations, especially now, since it's kind of cut and dry, there's a lot of as-is contracts out there. There's not necessarily the need. So what's your take on that? That's just obviously my opinion, but I'd love to hear yours.
I always recommend using an attorney.
Okay.
So, and part of that is, it's just like realtors, just like lenders, right? Your mileage may vary when it comes to the person that you engage, right? And I've been doing this long enough. I've got enough transactions behind me where I've got a good bench of people to go to. Given where I reside and where I do most of my business, it's probably 75% of the time there's attorneys on both sides. Okay. And that's even with working, say, Burlington County, which falls squarely into that, no attorney area. I have found that the deals without attorneys, while theoretically certain aspects of them go quicker, theoretically, I don't think they go smoother. And I'm saying that from the standpoint of working both scenarios, right? And I also, because I've vetted a bunch of attorneys, I know who to bring in. Yes. And it's not unusual if I'm working, say, South Jersey, and I'm like, listen, we're bringing an attorney. This is who it is. He's great. He primarily does real estate. He knows, fundamentally his philosophy is let's get to the closing table, not I'm here to win the argument, right? Which is something a lot of attorneys struggle with. And not really struggle. I mean, most attorneys become attorneys because they like to argue, right? And they're good at it. And the fact that they can all do real estate doesn't mean they should all do real estate. So having that extra third set of eyes who exist solely to protect the buyer's or the seller's interests, I think is beneficial. So I always recommend somebody use one. And I find frankly, where they get more screwed up than anything else is where there's no attorneys involved and agents go way too far over that line, and they really, get into the business of, from my lens, a lot of times practicing law without a license, right? And it's, I'm not,
right. So that's big.
It get real dangerous. So my preference is, where possible, have an attorney at least on the side that I'm representing, just to make sure that everything's done correctly, right? The worst thing that can happen is you find out after the fact that something was done wrong, and then there's a problem, right? And that's not a problem I want to engage with. So I look to protect, my client, but I also look to protect myself by recommending an agent or a attorney be an attorney.
Yeah, there's something you mentioned there. As I was going your path, I'm like drawing arrows and whatnot. And the one thing you were talking about is after the fact of the closing. And right now, when we're into the situations where it's the seller's market, a lot of as-is situations. People are bypassing
waivers, as-is deals, limited inspections, failure to disclose. New Jersey's not a disclosure required state yet.
Yeah.
Right? So some people are doing it, other people are not. And, I know there's buyers that are using those disclosure statements to make decisions off of, right?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, and that's the tough thing about this is that it's the after the fact part, because sometimes, and we won't call it buyer's remorse. I think it becomes more so like we expect to be in a home for a certain amount of time, but let's say even if you bought that Mercedes, 2 weeks in and all of a sudden the engine fails, you'd be like, dude, I got a lemon, right? And
Right.
that's the first thing somebody thinks of. There's a hailstorm, and then all of a sudden the roof caves in a little bit, or you got a drip somewhere, and all of a sudden, hey, you
Right.
didn't tell me about the roof and whatever else.
Right.
But I think you raise a really good point. Is usually when attorneys are involved in that situation, they think of, well, geez, I had to spend a couple G whizzes to make sure this person wrote the document correctly and review
Absolutely.
things and go through and
Yep.
be there. The last thing I want to do is bring these guys back in and do this. Like, should I resolve it? And then I think they're more reluctant to kind of go through that process. But when there is no attorney involved, that's when they start coming after you guys and even myself or even Paul. And you didn't tell me, So
Right.
I think that's a really good point there. Valuable information for sure.
Yeah, I like, to me, it for the minimal amount an attorney is going to cost your client, like, it's foolish not to engage them.
Right.
Like, really, you're talking a, $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 or more purchase, and the market rate for an attorney is what, $1,500. It's like, not for nothing. That's silly, right? Spend that money.
Yeah,
For
and
sure.
of course, it's a couple $100, and that still is a lot of money. But if you're not willing to spend $500 to $1,000 on an inspection to be able to walk away
Right.
from a problem that's a couple
Mhm.
$100,000, and
Yeah.
you're not willing to spend $1,000 to $1,500 for a quality attorney to represent you to get your back and make sure you're doing everything you need to do.
Right.
And listen, it's not required; it's not mandatory. But if
Get the new couch 6 months later. This is a big, big risky purchase when you get down to it. Cover your butt. That's how I view it.